Maybe you have experienced this strange feeling before. The doorbell suddenly rings. Someone wants to come inside, spend time with you, talk for a while, share a visit. But deep within yourself, something immediately tightens. You feel discomfort, resistance, and an intense desire to simply pretend you are not home. It is not because you hate people. It is not because you are bitter toward the world. In truth, you simply do not enjoy unexpected visitors. You value the silence of your home, the calmness of your routine, the protection of your energy. And if this sounds familiar to you, then stay here for a moment, because today we are talking about something very few people openly confess. The deeply personal and misunderstood discomfort some individuals feel when others step into their private space. And no, this does not automatically make you rude, cold, or antisocial. According to Carl Jung, this reaction may reveal something far more profound about your inner psychological nature. In this discussion, you are going to understand several Jungian insights that explain why some people dislike having visitors, and why this feeling is not only normal, but may actually reflect an important inner psychological process. If you have ever felt guilty for wanting to be alone, you may realize today that this has much more to do with your psychological growth than with any flaw in your personality. Have you ever wondered why some people feel completely alive during parties, social gatherings, and endless conversations, while you feel exhausted simply imagining a guest entering your home? Maybe you enjoy meaningful conversations and care deeply about people, but the moment someone wants to cross the threshold into your personal environment, something inside you immediately pulls away. It can feel as though the mere presence of another person begins draining your energy almost instantly. And according to Jungian psychology, there is a reason for that. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, introduced the concepts of introversion and extroversion in a way that went far beyond ordinary social labels. He was not merely describing shy people versus outgoing people. He was describing the direction of psychic energy itself. The extroverted individual naturally directs energy outward. They gain strength through interaction, movement, stimulation, and engagement with the external world. Being around others energizes them. But the introverted person functions very differently. Their energy is restored internally. Silence nourishes them. Solitude restores them. Reflection gives them clarity. Their mind recovers through distance from constant external stimulation. So when they are exposed to too much noise, long conversations, interruptions, unannounced visits, or overwhelming social interaction, something inside begins to shut down. Not because they believe they are better than others, but because psychologically they become overloaded. This is an important distinction. Disliking visitors is not necessarily a social weakness. Very often, it is simply an expression of how your inner energy system is structured. For deeply introverted people, the home becomes much more than a physical location. It becomes a sacred psychological refuge, a protected inner cocoon where the nervous system calms down and where the psyche slowly reorganizes itself after dealing with the demands of the outside world. Inside that space, the mind regains balance. The soul breathes again. And when someone suddenly enters that environment, even with kindness and good intentions, it can feel as though invisible threads inside you are being disturbed. Their presence unconsciously forces you to activate your social persona once again. You begin adjusting your tone, monitoring your reactions, managing the atmosphere, and unconsciously wearing the social mask required for interaction. The problem is that maintaining this mask consumes enormous psychological energy. Jung explained that introversion is not simply a preference. It is a deep orientation of the soul itself. And whenever you force yourself to constantly move against this inner structure, the result is exhaustion, tension, and emotional conflict. Many people misunderstand this completely. They see a quiet or reserved individual and assume they dislike others. But what often appears to be emotional distance is actually self-protection. It is a psychological boundary created unconsciously to preserve inner stability, a silent defense mechanism protecting the deeper self from becoming overwhelmed. And this leads directly into one of Jung's most important concepts, the shadow. The shadow is the hidden side of the personality, It contains the parts of yourself that remain buried beneath awareness. Certain fears, wounds, insecurities, emotions, memories, impulses, and unresolved experiences live there quietly beneath the surface. Most people are barely aware of how much their shadow influences their emotional reactions. When someone enters your home, you are not only allowing them into a physical environment. Unconsciously, you are allowing another presence into a space where your energy exists in its most exposed form. And that is where the shadow begins reacting. The shadow contains everything you once felt forced to suppress. Painful emotions you never fully processed. Old disappointments. Rejected parts of yourself. Deep vulnerabilities. Imagine this moment clearly. Someone knocks at the door. You invite them inside. The conversation begins. Outwardly, everything seems normal, but internally, an unexplained discomfort slowly rises within you. You cannot fully explain why you suddenly feel restless, tense, irritated, or emotionally trapped. Yet the sensation is real. According to Jung, this happens because the presence of another person may unconsciously touch hidden areas of your psyche that you have not yet fully confronted. Sometimes another person's voice, behavior, emotional energy, or even physical presence unconsciously activates unresolved material inside the shadow. This is why Jung famously said that what remains unconscious eventually appears in life as fate. In many cases, that fate emerges through emotional reactions that seem irrational on the surface. A harmless visit suddenly feels invasive. A simple conversation begins to feel emotionally heavy. You develop a powerful urge to reclaim your space and be alone again. This does not automatically make you arrogant or uncaring. Often it is your unconscious mind attempting to defend your psychological integrity. And there is another important truth hidden inside the shadow. The shadow does not only contain darkness, it also contains unrealized strengths, hidden talents, creativity, intuition, emotional depth, and parts of yourself that have not yet fully emerged into consciousness. The more you constantly adapt yourself to social expectations, force interactions, and remain trapped on the surface level of life, the less space your inner world has to unfold naturally. Sometimes your need for solitude is not weakness at all. Sometimes it is the soul asking for room to breathe. If you often crave silence after being around people, your inner self may be trying to communicate something important. It may be saying, slow down, withdraw for a moment, return to yourself, listen to what is happening inside you. And learning to honor that need takes courage in a world that constantly glorifies endless social engagement. Think about the feeling you experience after finally returning home from a long, exhausting day. You close the door behind you. You remove your shoes. The noise of the world fades away. Your breathing deepens. And for the first time all day, you can simply exist without performing for anyone. In Jungian psychology, the house itself becomes a symbol of the soul. It reflects the structure of your inner world. Your home is not just furniture and walls. It mirrors your psychological condition. That is why certain people feel extremely protective over their space. To them, the home is emotionally sacred. When someone enters your home, they are not merely walking into a room. Symbolically, they are stepping into your inner psychological territory. Jung believed that symbols reveal truths about the human psyche more powerfully than ordinary words ever can. And among all symbols, the house remains one of the strongest representations of the self. The home represents the center of your being. It is where psychological balance is restored, where healing quietly happens, where fragmented emotions slowly settle into order again. Every part of the house can symbolically reflect a different aspect of the personality. The bedroom may represent intimacy and vulnerability. The living room may symbolize the social self you present to the world. The kitchen can reflect emotional nourishment and care. The basement often symbolizes the unconscious mind where hidden fears and memories remain buried. The attic may represent higher thought, imagination, or spiritual awareness. And then there is the front door, the boundary between your inner world and the outside world. The moment someone crosses that threshold, your unconscious immediately recognizes that an external energy has entered your protected environment. Because people do not arrive alone. They carry emotions, stress, expectations, unresolved tensions, thoughts, and invisible psychological energy with them. Sensitive individuals absorb this far more deeply than others realize. Especially introverted people, or those moving through the Jungian process known as individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming your most authentic self. For such individuals, too much external presence can feel emotionally exhausting because their psyche is trying to maintain inner balance while simultaneously processing another person's energy. This is why silence becomes essential. Solitude becomes restorative. Distance becomes necessary. Jung never viewed the home as merely protection from society. He saw it as an inner mirror. If peace exists within your home, then often some degree of peace is beginning to form within you as well. And if you fiercely protect that peace, it may not be selfishness at all. It may simply be your soul trying to preserve the fragile balance it fought very hard to create. But if you sense that certain visits disturb your inner peace, shift the energy of your home, interrupt the quiet you deeply need, then maybe your unconscious mind is softly telling you, "This soul is still healing. I'm not prepared to open every door yet," and that is completely fine. Protecting your home also means protecting your inner world. In depth psychology, honoring your boundaries is one of the most important steps toward healing and emotional integration. So if you've ever felt guilty for not wanting guests around, for craving solitude instead of company, understand this clearly now. You are not isolating yourself from life. You are respecting the sacred place where your soul lives. Have you ever smiled politely while inside you only wanted silence? Offered coffee, kept conversations going, acted warm and welcoming while secretly wondering, when will this finally end? It may sound cold at first, and afterward you probably judge yourself for it. Ungrateful, distant, maybe even selfish. But this is exactly where Carl Jung helps us understand what is truly happening beneath the surface. Jung called it the persona, the mask each person wears before the world. It is the social identity, the version of ourselves that adapts to work, family, friendships, expectations, and even simple visits. The persona is not fake, but it is incomplete. It is only one fragment of who you really are, usually the part that society accepts most easily. The difficulty begins when you are forced to keep wearing that mask inside your own home, the one place where your soul should finally be able to rest. For highly sensitive people, observant individuals, introverts, deep thinkers, a visit can become emotionally exhausting far more quickly than others understand. Suddenly you are performing again. You monitor your tone, your expressions, your responses. You think about the atmosphere, the brightness of the lights, the mess in the kitchen, the timing of the conversation, the pressure to remain emotionally available. All of this drains psychic energy, and it drains a tremendous amount of it. Jung explained that the persona is necessary because it helps us move through society. But when we begin confusing the mask with our true self, something inside starts to suffer. The soul begins calling for air. Perhaps this is why you feel such resistance toward visitors sometimes. It is not hatred toward people. It is not cruelty. It is the exhaustion of constantly feeling required to perform a socially acceptable version of yourself when all your spirit truly wants is stillness. To sit quietly, to walk barefoot through your own home without needing to explain yourself, to stare through a window and simply exist without demands. And what makes it even heavier is that many people spend years trapped inside that performance. Even in their own homes, they continue smiling, hosting, pleasing, entertaining, all while feeling deeply exhausted underneath. Internally irritated, mentally drained, emotionally disconnected from themselves. But here is the liberating truth hidden within depth psychology. You have the right to fully be yourself in your own space. You are allowed to decline visits. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say no without turning it into guilt. Because every time you abandon yourself to endlessly satisfy everyone else, a part of your soul quietly disappears. There are moments in life when all you truly desire is to be alone. Not because you are dramatic, not because you dislike humanity, but because your soul is asking for silence. Yet many people feel ashamed of this desire. Society praises those who are always available, always social, always active, always surrounded by noise and movement. But Carl Jung viewed this very differently. For him, the urge to withdraw was often the beginning of one of the deepest journeys a human being can take. The journey of individuation. Individuation means becoming the person you were always meant to become. Not the version society created. Not the expectations placed upon you by family or culture. Not the carefully maintained persona. But your real self, including your light and your darkness, your conscious mind and your unconscious depths, your truth in its rawest form. And this process rarely happens in chaos or constant stimulation. It happens in silence, in retreat, in moments where the outside world quiets down enough for your inner voice to finally be heard. This is why discomfort around visitors is not always laziness or instability, as people often assume. Sometimes it is your psyche trying to protect your inner balance, trying to pull you away from distractions so you can hear something important emerging from within yourself. There may be something inside you waiting to surface, something that can only rise in solitude. Jung once said that loneliness does not come from being physically alone. It comes from being unable to express what truly matters to you. And what could matter more than finally listening to your own soul? But how can you hear yourself clearly in endless noise? In forced conversations that never touch anything real? In visits that stretch on while your spirit quietly grows tired? The truth is that some phases of life require conscious solitude, not as escape, but as immersion. You do not withdraw because you want to disappear. You withdraw because you want to return to yourself more fully, clearer, stronger, more authentic than before. While the world constantly asks for your attention through obligations, gatherings, expectations, conversations, and social performance, your inner world may be asking for something entirely different. A little more silence, a little more time, a little more distance from everything that overwhelms you. Sometimes your soul whispers, "Stay here a little longer. Do not open the door yet. Take care of yourself first."